Okay, so on today's podcast episode, I want to talk about something that if you're not paying attention, then you just miss it. Because there's a lot of information out there, right? We're not starved for information. There's plenty of it out there going around. But what's taking place today, in today's time, is a significant rise in inequality. And it's an inequality rise. And this is, I've kind of touched on it a little bit on various podcast episodes, depending on, whether or not the situation warranted it. But while I was perusing Reddit, I came across a article. Now, this is back in November. So you're talking 7, 8, about 9 months ago now that this article came out on Newsweek. But I was, kind of thumbing through some old text messages that I had on, that I would, routinely like send things to myself so that I can go back and look through some things and pull some stuff up. And so I had done so, and while I was looking through photos, I came across this older article that was on Reddit, when I was looking on Reddit. And this is the title of this article. Millionaire CEO warns U.S. economic situation could lead to revolution. Could lead to revolution. Now, he's basically what he says is, and I'm not going to quote the whole article because, that's obviously going to be problematic for a number of reasons. But he basically says his name is Bradley Tusk, and American venture capitalist Bradley Tusk. And he's warned that growing inequality in the United States could lead to a revolution. Quote, right now, if we don't do anything, it seems to me you could have a world with Elon Musk and 25 other trillionaires and 19% unemployment. And to me, that just means the French Revolution is coming, Tusk told British radio station LBC on Thursday. End quote. Now, at the time of this, back in November, Elon Musk was projected to be the world's first trillionaire. Well, that's already happened. And Tesla has already approved there was a $1 trillion compensation package to him, obviously tied to the company and how much it grows. But here you have somebody. This is the interesting thing in this whole dynamic, is that here you have somebody who runs a venture capitalist firm and is telling you that with this current, projected way things are going, with the way things are going, and this growing inequality, he sees the French Revolution or something akin to it. And for those of you who are not savvy with your history, the French Revolution did not turn out very well for the king and a lot of people in power. The guillotine was a thing. And so this is an interesting dynamic here, because you have somebody who, he's definitely a millionaire. He's a venture capitalist, and but you have somebody that's, well connected within Wall Street, if you will, who is saying, if we don't address this inequality that we have, I see down the line, 25 people who are trillionaires, massive unemployment, civil unrest, and I think the revolution, or something akin to the French Revolution is coming. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think he's wrong. He has other people. Robert Kennedy Jr. said something akin to this as well. This was before he joined. I think this was before he joined with Trump on that administration. And he was actually talking to Glenn Beck, of all people. And he said something akin to, we've got, 50, 60 some percent of Americans can't even put their hands on $1,000. I think that, there's going to be we can't continue down this path if you If you follow it to its logical conclusion, we can't continue down this path. And so he said that, and I thought, well, that's very interesting. And by the way, I will link that video because I have an article on my website, and I don't know exactly where it's at right this second. I'll see if I can't find it while I'm sitting here having this conversation. But I do know that it was, I included a video of that. And this is a very interesting thing. It's kind of akin to it was Brett Weinstein. So Brett Weinstein, because we're talking about inequality, so this all kind of meshes together. But I wrote an article that I was listening to a podcast, Joe Rogan, and he had Brett Weinstein on. And there are things that Brett Weinstein says, and I'm just like, nah, I don't. There's a lot of things that a lot of people, a lot of guests, right? You don't agree with everything everybody says. But one thing he said that caught my eye, and I said, well, I need to go back and earmark that so I know where to get it. And he said, the stinginess of the right produces the communistic impulses of the left. And I wrote an article about that on the website, and I think that, again, he is absolutely right. And so when you have all of this massive inequality, this continuing, this enormous gulf of inequality, when people say something like, hey, this is a revert, we're seeing the Gilded Age again. We're seeing the age of robber barons again, which, was right around the time that unionism began to kick off in significant impulses. They're right. People that say that are absolutely correct. They're 100% right about that. And but just in the Industrial Revolution, that really kind of ramped up the possibility of this. And this idea that, this aristocracy where, this American aristocracy, because we're talking about America here, where, you've got in the case of, building off of this article here, you got 25 trillionaires, right? And everybody else below you. Well, back then it was roughly the same. You had a few tycoons or robber barons, if you will, that had all of this, and everybody else had nothing. You lived in company house. You got paid with company script. You shopped at a company store. Like you had to pay for, you had to pay for everything out of them. You were effectively an indentured servant or a slave, if you will, to that company. And you had to fight for everything you got. And so now when you look at the current landscape and you listen to Bradley Tusk talk about this whole dynamic, it's a revert. So the people that say things like, hey, our growing inequality and the way things are looking, we are on the cusp of having significant problems with society and civilization. They are right. They are 100% right. And the dynamic here, the major difference, if you will, the major difference between the time of the robber barons and industrialization, industrial revolution, and today, I think was unionism kept at bay this idea of a complete revolution. Unionism put a stop on it because it's the most effective weapon that individuals, it still is, by the way, but I'll get into this in a little bit, but it's the most effective weapon that you and I have against corporations and the uber wealthy. It is the only significant weapon. We really can't rely on government. And the major reason why, there's actually, really, it's two reasons, but the major reason why is that government is co-opted. Government, they call it captured agencies, but, like, let's say Department of Energy it has an incestuous relationship with those it is supposed to regulate, so it's captured in that way. Same thing with big pharma, and maybe they're working on doing it now, but nonetheless, when it comes to work and how things are kind of played, if you will, you're looking at a significant problem where the government is co-opted and they don't serve the interests of the people so much as they serve the interests of, number one, themselves, and number two, corporations, because they've donated, millions of dollars to their campaigns and whatnot. And so you can't rely on government then, not even government law. I've said this numerous times. You can go back and listen to a number of different podcast episodes, or you can also go and look at different articles or different musings, or shorter form contents that, where you go into, like, you sit here and you start looking at, um, excuse me, you start looking at where different laws, like the Department of Labor, looking to raise the threshold for salary workers being able to make overtime. That was challenged in court. You look at the government and how they were taking shots or taking aim at the wanton and rabid abuse of non-compete clauses. That was taken to court as well. Why? Because no one wants anything to change. If you change things, who stands to benefit and who stands to lose in that regard? So the overarching point that I'm making is that you can't depend on government. You can't depend on government. It's co-opted. In a lot of ways, government is co-opted. And so because that is the case, where is the actual power at? The power is and has always been with the people. Now, if you keep people divided, then you erode that power. And when you erode the power of the people, you keep them divided, you have complete control. Now, there are outliers, there are groups of people that band together and are successful to some degree in stemming the tide and pushing things back. And you do have politicians that certainly appear to be against the grain, if you will, and be pushing back. Josh Hawley, senator, I did a podcast episode here recently about the Faster Contracts Labor Act. That is I'm pushing for that piece of legislation, if you will, where it doesn't, because under current labor law, there is no, I say the power is in the people. So people come together and they collectively decide we want to push for, a union, and then you have no deadline. There's nothing. A company can drag their feet for a long time. I already talked about this, but Amazon is probably about 4+ years that the people in one of their warehouses in New York have voted to be recognized as a union to negotiate collectively, and they still do not have a contract. They don't want things to change. And so you have people like Josh Hawley and others who are actively pushing for significant change. But for the most part, government is co-opted and you're unable to really rest. So you have to have the people have to come together and have to be collectively have decided that things can't stay the way they are. Which leads me to my next point, building off of what, Bradley Tusk is talking about, the French Revolution, about growing inequality. The idea that younger people today are so open is the word I'll use. The fact that there are so many young people today who are open to a different economic model than capitalism as it's currently employed is not a shock to me, nor should it be a shock to anybody else. Neither should it be a shock to a lot of people that you got Mamdani, who Bradley Tusk actually likes him to some degree because he thinks that some of his ideas are right. He doesn't agree with everything, but he does think that some of his ideas are pretty good. It's not a shock to me, or it shouldn't be a shock to anybody, that Mamdani comes in and he is, he was received to the degree that he was. Why? Because clearly we have a problem with the current economic model where a large swath of the people feel like they cannot get ahead. They feel like they're underwater, which they are in a lot of ways. And a lot of older people made it that way. And so they feel like, well, if this particular economic model, this crony capitalism that we're under, is not sufficient, not working for me and a large swath of other people, well, to heck with it. I want something else. I want to do something else. And this idea that young people are enamored with a different economic model should not come as a surprise. It shouldn't. But that is building off of what Mr. Tusk is talking about, where he's talking about the rising inequality, because it gives people something to think about. How are you a trillionaire and we don't have massive unemployment yet? Yet is the word that I'll say. Are we poised to potentially have massive unemployment? I don't think it's a possibility. I think it's a probability at this point. I'm on Reddit all the time, and I'm reading. There are so many posts that from the white collar world, where the white collar is talking about how they don't have any skill set in the trades, and they're interested, and they're not doing it for the most part. I mean, there are some of them who are doing it because they want to change the pace. Some of them are doing it because they are looking down the line and they believe that their jobs are going to be eroded and done away with by AI. And sure as I'm talking to you, you can bet that a company, if they can get AI to do that job, they will fire that person, get rid of them. And then you have, I mean, they've already tried doing this. Ford tried doing it, and they had to bring back, I think the number was like 300 different engineers, because not only did AI not save them money, it cost them money because it was causing problems. So they're already experimenting with this. And the industry, my industry, the construction industry, the trades, they can't, number one, we're not going to be able to take care of all of those people. The industry isn't going to grow to that degree. Number two, they don't have the skill set. We're in the midst of a skilled trade shortage, but we're also in the midst of an age experience gap as well. That is going to be very painful in the next decade to take care of, which in the ramifications of that are going to last for a couple more decades for the most part. And number three, you're going to have a lot of unemployment because of those things, that we can't absorb everybody in that regard. So do I see unemployment rising? I think it's going to happen. And what I think is that you're going to have a lot more people who are interested in scrapping the current economic model for something else, and that is usually ushered in through revolution. And that's what Mr. Tusk is talking about here. That's what he's warning about. Saying we should actively be doing something, whatever that happens to be. For the vast majority of those guys that are in the uber wealthy class, and then those that are co-opted in government, they don't want things to change because they're enriching their pockets, and they don't, if anything that changes, I lose out on something, is basically how it's viewed. So if I lose out on something, why do I want things to change? Why do I want things to change? Why would I I'll just use Walmart as an example. Why would I want to change the way things are working, where I pay my workers pennies on the dollar, and I basically have the taxpayer subsidizing my employee base, which is precisely what, Tucker Carlson talked about that. He's talking, with Sean O'Brien on his show about how, Walmart has been doing it for a long time. They have effectively had you, the taxpayer, subsidizing their employees so that they can enrich themselves at the upper level. They don't want things to change. But when you have apathy to that degree up there and a massive inequality gulf that is, we're currently experiencing, you know what happens? The ideas for an economic model change, which has already started, and then the very real potential for some form of a revolution. Now, what form it looks like is anybody's guess. But it's there. The seeds are there. They're there. They're watered. And at this point, I don't think it's just a probability. A possibility, excuse me. I think it's a probability. I think it's a probability that we will see something, because we cannot continue on the same trajectory that we're on. It's unsustainable in so many ways. So both of those, I will attempt to leave both of I'm going to leave several different articles and videos in the description for today's show, because that way you can go back and corroborate and read or watch, depending on how you consume your content, to see, kind of what I've been talking about, some of the sources, some of the source material, if you will. But our inequality can't stay like this. It cannot continue to grow either, because we're going to have serious systemic problems. And I might as well say this too. Even though you cannot rely on government, does not mean that we should not give up completely in actively pushing for change. We should salute those politicians that are actively working for the actual American person, as they're striving to come together collectively. And remember that collective, when we come together, the whole country is premised on this. We've come together to form a more perfect union. And because of that, we're stronger together. Why would it be any different for the American worker? It's not. So don't fall for the propaganda. The collective, when we come together, is far better and far stronger than anything else that we can envision. So, all right. Well, thank you for taking your time out today to listen to this podcast episode. I greatly appreciate it. If you want to be a guest or have some kind of comments or whatever, you can go into the show notes here. There's a link to the contact page. You can catch me there, and then we can have a conversation. Thanks for listening. And as always, stay safe out there.